Hi Neha. Hi Mamta.
Hi, ma'am.
Hi,
How are
ma'am.
you?
I'm fine.
Ma'am.
So last two classes, is that part clear? Any doubts from that part?
Yes, ma'am. That's clear.
Okay. So we'll wait for a few more minutes for others to join, then we'll start. Someone new joined today, is it? Any idea, anyone? Okay, so we'll quickly revise what we discussed in last class, okay, until others join. So we started with like the history of Indian Contract Act, what were applicable before Indian Contract Act came into picture. Then we have this like few changes that were made to the Indian Contract Act just to make it relevant with the present situation. So certain changes were also made whenever it was felt necessary just to make it applicable or relevant based on the situation. Then we have these two major parts, the general principles and specific contracts. So we are continuing with general principles only for 2-3 more classes. We will continue with that part, then we will move to the specific types of contracts. So general principles part is like more important as compared to specific contracts, because there you just need to know what are the different types of contracts, right? And also like what are the different rights and liabilities of both the parties to the contract depending on the nature of contract. Like in case of bailment, what would be the rights and obligations of both the parties, and similar with the other cases also. So that part is not like that big also. It's so that part we will start with next. So you can go through this table also just to have an idea on the sections, different sections that talks about different provisions. So it is applicable for both Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, and these sections you try to remember. So for definition part, these are the important definitions that we discussed. What are the differences between a contract and agreement? We also know that all contracts are agreements, but contract is what? Contract is only like a small portion of agreements, right? All agreements are not contracts. Some are void agreements also. Some are just some promises made to the other person without having an intention to create legal obligation or a legal relationship with the other person also. So these were the differences that we discussed. Then this offer and counter offer, and some questions. And then basic elements of contract. So in last class, we discussed about offer. Today, we will be starting with acceptance. And then accordingly, we will move with the next different types of elements that we are having for formation of a valid contract. So we saw the definition of offer that is mentioned under section 2A, right? Offer or promise. Then we also came to know that what all things offer involves. It involves expression of readiness, that I'm ready to perform my part of contract if this other person gives acceptance to my offer. It should be made to someone else. It's not like I'm making a promise to myself, tomorrow I'm breaking it and I'm going to the court. So that should not be the case. And why am I making the offer? Just to get acceptance or rejection from the other person, so that I also know whether this other person is willing to perform the part or his part of contract or not. Then contract offer can be made in an express way or implied also. Express would be made in terms of words. It may be spoken words, it may be written words. I'm sending an SMS, writing an email, writing a letter, or it may be anything. Or it may be implied. From my actions, it's very clear that I intend to enter into a contract with the other person. I'm standing at a railway station, a coolie comes and picks up my luggage. It's very clear that he wants to enter into a contract with me. He need not come to me and say it directly that, can I, like take your luggage to the taxi stand and you pay me this much amount of rupees. It's very implied from his actions itself. Then offers can be made, like depending on to whom it is made, it can be specific offers and general offers. What is specific offers? It is made to one specific person or a group of persons. Who can give acceptance to it? Only that specific person, that specific group of persons, or anyone authorized on behalf of them. In case of general offer, it is open to general public. Anyone who has knowledge of that offer, who fulfills all the terms and conditions mentioned in it, like is said to have given his acceptance. He need not write a letter saying that I, like accept your this general offer, I want to perform my part of contract and all of that. We need not do that if everything is mentioned clearly in the offer itself. Same happened in the case of Carbolic Smoke Ball Company also, right? That this Carlin, what she did is that because everything was so clearly written in the newspaper, what she did is that she just went to the medical store, she just bought those smoke balls and started consuming it based on the directions given. So she don't need to, like write a letter to that manufacturer saying that I am accepting your offer, I want to consume this medicine or anything like that. So in case of general offer, what we need is that we should have knowledge of that particular offer, and we should be willing and we should act based on the terms and conditions that are being mentioned. And we also discussed this Lalman Shukla versus Gauri Dutt case, where the servant was not having knowledge of the offer, but still he performed the, like whatever was mentioned in that particular offer. And later on, he tried to claim the reward. He cannot claim. Why? Because he was not even knowing about the offer. If you don't know about an offer, how can you give your acceptance? If you cannot give your acceptance, there is no contract between the persons, and hence the person is not liable to like give that reward to the other person. So for general offer, it's very important that we have knowledge, and based on that knowledge only we are performing those terms and conditions. It's not like by coincidence I performed those same terms and conditions, later on I came to know about the offer and I'm demanding for that particular like reward or whatever prize money is there. Next thing we discussed is with regard to offer and invitation to offer. So there is a difference between what offer is and what is invitation to offer. In case of offer, what happens? It's like very, like everything is mentioned, right? It's very crisp and clear. We can give our acceptance and proceed with the contract. In case of invitation to offer, they are just inviting others that you come and you give me an offer, then I would decide whether I want to proceed with it or not. Just posting an ad on the newspaper saying I have a 2 BHK, like vacant at my home, rent is 18,000 rupees. That would not bind the owner of that house that anyone who comes and is willing to pay 18,000, he should give, like allow that person to stay at that particular house. He is not bound under that. Why? Because it was merely an invitation to offer, not an offer. Same would be the case with if someone is publishing an ad saying that these are the essential qualifications that I need for this particular post, and these are some, preferred qualifications. Even if I'm having all that qualification, I cannot just go and demand that you should hire me. Why? Because there may be certain other grounds or things that the person is looking for. He is not giving me an offer, but he was just inviting all the other possible candidates for offer, right? Same would happen in case there is an ad on the matrimonial section of a newspaper. If someone says I'm looking for a girl of this age group having these criteria, if someone fulfills those criteria, that person cannot just go and demand you marry me. Why? Because that was just an invitation to offer. There may be certain other things or factors that the person is looking for, right? So in that case, someone cannot just go and demand that I'm fulfilling all the conditions, you should accept this particular offer. It is just an invitation to offer. Same happened in this case of Harris versus Nickerson, that this was ad was published that we are conducting this auction for 3 days selling different things. On the third day, we will be selling office furniture. That was what? That was merely an invitation to offer. So someone who traveled all the way to attend that auction, he cannot, he was not successful in getting compensation because it was not an offer that was made to him. It was basically an invitation to offer. Then we also had the case of Pharmaceutical Society of Great Britain versus Boots Cash Chemicals Limited. In this case also, all these different types of drugs were displayed on the shelves of a shop with a price tag mentioned. What customers had to do, they would just take a basket, they would just put all the drugs that they need in that basket and they would pay for it and then they will leave. But in this case, when the person went to the shop, he picked up all the drugs that he wanted. The cashier, he refused to sell those drugs. So in that case also, the person cannot demand you should sell those to me only, right? So same applies in case we are going to a bakery shop and we cannot just demand that this particular themed cake you should sell to me. Maybe that is there only for display, that is ordered by someone else who might be coming to pick it up at any moment. So they won't sell it to me, but they might say that we can make another cake similar to this for you, but it would take some time, so you need to wait for that time. So similarly, this is the difference between what offer and invitation to offer is. That we also saw the conditions for valid offer. Certain conditions that we need for valid offer. What were these? That it should create legal relationship. The terms and conditions should be very much clear. It should be different from mere declaration of intention, right? If I'm just saying I'm willing to sell this particular plot of land that I am having, that is not offer. That is what? Just mere declaration of intention. Later at any moment, I might feel that maybe it's a better idea not to sell the plot at this moment, right? So I'm not legally bound to sell it to someone because I was just letting the other person know about my intentions. Then offer must be distinguished from invitation to offer. We already discussed that. Then offer must be communicated, right? Just having the thought in my mind is not enough. The other person should also know about it, and then only the person can proceed with the contract. So for formation of a valid offer, we need communication, right? I should be letting the other person know about my intentions. Then offer should not should not contain any term non-compliance of which would not amount to acceptance. So anyone remembers what this point is? Point number F. What is this point? Anyone remembers?
Yes, ma'am. Like, when you offer a thing, there should not be any terms and condition,
Hmm.
and terms and condition, and that non-compliance. Non-compliance means like not in progress or something. You have said.
Not performing, right? So
Yes,
you
yes.
are not performing it, so it's like that means you have given consent. So like that we cannot do. Today we will also see one case relating to this point, so it would be like more clear. So in the like offer, I cannot have one clause where I am saying non-compliance as in non-performance. If you are not performing this, I would consider you have given your consent. I cannot do like that, right? So that is also one thing. Then special terms and conditions in the offer must be communicated. If there are certain special things, then that also should be specifically communicated. Take for example, if you are buying something online, okay, what the price means? Price means whatever you are paying for it, right? Whatever you would need to pay for it. Take for example, you are looking for a dress online, it shows like 2000 rupees. Now you would be under an impression that you need to pay 2000 rupees to get that dress, right? Now if they are charging extra for delivery, shipping or anything like that, they should mention that, right? They cannot just deduct it from your card. They should mention that, okay, like delivery charges extra. While you are making the payment, they should mention that, okay, for delivery we are taking 150 rupees. What is that? That is some special terms and conditions that must be communicated. You would see in shopping malls also, right? When you visit, you would see like pantaloons and all, you would see like in their cash counter, right? They would write that like tax is not included. That means whatever price we are mentioning for each and every item, we are not including tax in that. So even if you are buying things for like 5000 rupees, when you actually go to pay for that, it might become just like 5000 and some more, a few hundred rupees. Why? Because tax is not included in that MRP. So what they are doing is that they would mention that in the like cash counter itself, so that everyone would know about it. If you are visiting some other shops and all, you would see no exchange, no return, or like exchange only for 15 days or things like that. Those are what some special terms and conditions. So they would display that like openly, so that people would come to know about it. If you are going to park your vehicle at some like place, maybe parking place and all also, they would mention that they are not responsible for your vehicle. So if something goes wrong, like someone just hits your car or someone just hits your vehicle, you cannot just go and file a case against the like the people who are authorized under that parking place, right? Why? Because they are not responsible for your vehicle to take care of it, right? They have just allowed you to park it there. It's at your own risk. So like that, you would see those are what? Those are special terms and conditions that might be applicable for you. So is this part clear? Any doubts on any points you can ask? Any doubts, anyone? Any points you can say?
No
See,
doubt.
okay. Others?
No doubt, ma'am.
Aishwarya, Neha?
No doubt, ma'am.
Okay, so we'll move with the next part. Okay, so now we know what offer is, right? Another thing that we have is acceptance, right? So when offer is made, we would need acceptance for formation of a valid, like a valid contract, right? If it's rejected, obviously there is no contract. So second thing that we need is acceptance for formation of a valid contract. Now, what is acceptance? It is defined under section 2B of the Indian Contract Act. So it is acceptance, and when acceptance takes place, then it becomes a promise, right? So both acceptance and promise are defined under section 2B. What is acceptance? When the person to whom the proposal is made signifies his assent thereto, the proposal is said to be accepted. So when the person to whom proposal is made, take for example in any case, and like A made an offer, okay, A made an offer to B. So A made an offer to B. In this case, who would give acceptance? B will give his acceptance, right? So in this case, B will give his acceptance. So A made an offer to B. Now B will give his acceptance. What is acceptance? He signifies his assent thereto. What is assent? Approval, right? He signifies his assent thereto. That means he lets the other person know about his approval on that particular matter, right? If A is saying, I want to sell my vehicle for 20,000 rupees to you, in that case, what B is doing by giving acceptance, he has accepted that I will pay you 20,000 rupees and in return, I am willing to take your vehicle, right? So that is what acceptance is. What is it? One person is signifying his assent. Signifying as in he is letting the other person know. His assent is approval, right? So whatever you are saying, I agree to that thing, or I, like approve that thing. That is what acceptance is basically, right? So whatever you are saying, I agree to that particular thing. So when I'm doing that, it becomes acceptance. A proposal when accepted becomes a promise. That means A made a offer to B that I want to sell my vehicle for 20,000 rupees. When B gives his acceptance to that particular thing, then it becomes what? Then it becomes a promise where both the parties would be bound and liable to perform their parts. Why? Because A gave his offer and B also agreed on that particular offer. How acceptance should be given? It should be as it is, right? It cannot be like one part I'm accepting, another part I'm not accepting, or things like that. It should be absolute acceptance. Whatever things I'm saying, you should agree to all of that. If I'm saying I want to sell you my two-wheeler for 20,000 rupees, but whatever extra charges you would incur in terms of transferring the RC or getting a new insurance or all of that thing, those things you need to do yourself. I won't do that. You need to visit the RTO office. I will not help you with that. So you should accept to all those conditions. It's not like you are just accepting that I want to take your bike for 20,000 rupees. You should also agree to the other conditions for it to make a valid acceptance, right? So it should be what? It should be absolute to all the conditions, to all the things you are accepting. You are giving your approval. So is the definition part clear? What is acceptance and promise? Definition, is this part clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Now for acceptance also, there are certain things that should be there. Okay, it's like, well, like rules of valid acceptance. That means to make the acceptance valid, there should be certain certain things that we should satisfy, or certain things that we should fulfill. First is acceptance must be absolute and unqualified. What is that? Acceptance must be absolute and unqualified. Anyone wants to explain that part? Acceptance must be absolute and unqualified. Anyone? You can just give some examples, or you can just explain it in your own words. What is it? Vijay, you want to explain what is absolute and unqualified acceptance?
Ma'am, there should be no ambiguity in accepting the proposal, ma'am.
Yeah, there should be no ambiguity in accepting the proposal. Right. So acceptance must be what? Absolute and unqualified. Absolute as in, if there are three things that I have mentioned, right? If I have mentioned I want to sell my two-wheeler for 20,000 rupees, whatever extra charges you would incur in terms of transferring RC, getting insurance and all of that, I won't pay for that. Whatever formalities are there at the RTO office, you need to get that done. That means what? There are 3 different conditions which I have put in my offer. So you should give your acceptance to all those 3 things, right? That would become absolute. It's not like the one thing you are doing and then you are, like putting certain other conditions that maybe I will go to RTO office, but you also should come along with me, or other things. That is not acceptance, right? What is that? That becomes counter offer. The other person is giving me a counter offer that you should go along with me to the RTO office or something like that. So for valid acceptance, it should always be what? It should be absolute and it should be unqualified. I'm not putting certain other conditions or terms to it. And whatever things are being mentioned, I'm agreeing to each and every point out of those things. Next is acceptance must be in the prescribed manner. What is that point? Anyone?
Ma'am, sometimes the offerer himself prescribes that the acceptance should be made in such and such manner. Either it can be oral or written. So then the acceptor, he should comply with those terms and conditions and he should only accept in that particular manner prescribed.
Okay. And what if they, like the offerer has not mentioned any mode or anything?
And then either it can be express or implied, like the offer, like we studied about the offer, right? It can be express or implied. So it can either be by words or it can also be by conduct.
Yeah, right. So second point that we have is that acceptance must be in the prescribed manner. So if while making the offer only, I'm, I'm writing an email and I'm saying that I'm willing to sell my 2-wheeler to you. If you want to buy it, you can respond to this email itself. Okay, so in that case, what happens is that you cannot send me an SMS and give your acceptance. That won't be considered. Why? Because I have already prescribed the mode how acceptance should be given. So if I have already said that you should give your acceptance as a response to this particular email, you should do it accordingly. You cannot just, over phone, you cannot give your acceptance, or by sending an SMS or WhatsApp message, you cannot do that. Why? Because I have already mentioned the prescribed mode. But there might be certain cases where I'm just making the offer, but I have not mentioned any mode how you should give your acceptance. I'm just writing an email, maybe I have sent you a letter or something like that, but I have not mentioned how you can give your acceptance to that. In that case, what happens? You should use some usual or reasonable manner. That means whatever is, commonly used, or whatever is a reasonable way to communicate acceptance, that thing you can use. Take for example, writing an email would be a usual and reasonable mode, right? That we use most of the times. It may be by making a phone call, it may be by writing an SMS, or it may be writing an email or something like that, right? What is usual and reasonable? What we normally follow. It may be by way of some conduct also, right? That if you, I want to buy this thing from you for this, like I'm very clearly telling you that I want some raw materials. This is the quantity. Like take for example, I want 5 kgs of rice of this particular brand, of this particular type, this particular variety, and all of that I have mentioned. And I want it to be delivered at my home, and this and that. I have mentioned everything. So in that case, what you are doing is that maybe you have just directly sent that, quantity of rice. Why? Because my offer was very clear to you and you have just sent it to me. So by conduct also, maybe you have given your acceptance. So it should be in the prescribed manner. When manner is not prescribed, it should be in some usual and reasonable mode. So if you are, sending me an email and giving me an offer, what I cannot do is that I should not, take for example, I'm an artist, okay? I make some, abstract drawings, like modern paintings I make. What I should not do is that if you are asking me, would you be interested in buying my vehicle? I cannot, take for example, what I have made is that I have made a cartoon where, there is that particular bike of that other person and I'm riding that bike and I'm sending that to the other person. So now what would this other person understand from that particular thing? That is not how, what is reasonable and what is usual mode, right? So I'm sending that person a drawing where I am, like riding his bike. So that does not mean that I am accepting this particular thing. It may just mean that I'm, like buying same type of vehicle from the shop and then I'm riding it. So that is not clear, right? So it should not be like that. It's, like very vague. The other person is not able to understand. So it should be in some usual or reasonable manner if it is not prescribed. Next is acceptance must be communicated. What is that point?
Both the parties must be communicate what are the terms and condition in the acceptance proposal, ma'am.
Okay. So in case of acceptance also, if someone has given me an offer with certain terms and conditions, if I am accepting it, I should communicate about it, right? If someone is writing an email to me and asking me something and also saying, if you accept to this, this thing, you can respond to this email. It's not like in my mind, I'm thinking that, oh, that's a very good offer. Maybe I should accept. Okay, fine, if I accept, this would happen, that would happen. That is not acceptance, because that is in my mind only I'm thinking, right? So I should communicate about my acceptance to the other person. I should let the other person know that I accept to or agree to all those things, right? So acceptance must be communicated. We will also see one case relating to this. Unless and until it is communicated, then what happens? It does not make a valid contract. Next is only authorized person should communicate about the acceptance. What is that point? Only authorized person should communicate about it.
Ma'am, it means like, the person who agreed for the accept, only that person has to communicate with the correct.
So yeah, right. So any like random stranger cannot come and communicate about acceptance, right? It should be that particular person only to whom offer was made, or it may be his legal representative or someone who is authorized to give acceptance on his behalf, right? Maybe I made one offer to, like a CEO of a certain company, right? I sent an email to that particular CEO asking if you have a vacancy in your office. I am having these qualifications. I would love to join your company. Now the CEO might not respond to my email, but he may ask someone, like one of his employees, some HR or someone, that you respond to this particular email. Maybe you make a phone call to this particular candidate and you like schedule an interview. So in this particular case, this HR or any other employee of that particular CEO, who are they? They are authorized persons, right? So they can also give acceptance. If I'm making a certain offer to a company over there, like official email, maybe different people from different departments are having access to that email. Maybe I wrote, to the director, addressing to the director. Maybe I got a response from the sales team. But now that is what? That sales team person is what? Someone who is authorized to give acceptance, right? On behalf of that particular company. So who can give acceptance? It should be that particular person to whom offer is made, or it should be someone who is authorized or who is having that legal, like the legal capacity to give his acceptance. Only that person can give acceptance to any particular offer. Acceptance should be made within the time prescribed or within a reasonable time. What is this point now? Anyone?
Like, ma'am, it's like, acceptance should not be made for a longer period of time. It should be in a specific and very less duration.
Yeah, it should be within a reasonable time, right? So it is also somewhat similar to acceptance should be in the prescribed manner. If someone is clearly writing me an email, I cannot just send him like an abstract painting expressing my, like acceptance. That won't be a valid acceptance. Similar is the case with time period. So acceptance should be within the time prescribed or within a reasonable time. If I'm mentioning a time frame, it should be within that time frame. If I'm saying that, take for example, someone has sent me an email that like we are having like an urgent need of maybe someone who can draft like legal documents. Okay, we need someone who can draft contracts for our company, and it's like very urgent. So you should respond to it within like 5 days. Within 5 days, we are closing this particular position. So in that particular case, I should respond to them within 5 days only, that I'm interested and I'm available in doing this contract drafting job for you, right? So if they are mentioning that it is within 5 days we are closing it, within that particular duration only I should respond to them. And in case any time limit is not mentioned, then it should be within a reasonable time. Now, what is reasonable time? It may be, in certain cases, it may be just few minutes. In certain cases, it may be few hours. In some cases, it may be few days. In some cases, it may be few years also. So what is reasonable time? We don't have a definition for that. We don't have a prescribed time frame that, okay, fine, this is only what is reasonable time, right? That would depend on the situation, that would depend on the type of contract. If, take for example, I have like a severe injury in my hands, I went to some, like a nursing home, and I'm asking, like, can you do the treatment? So at that point of time, what happens? It's like a very urgent thing, right? I got a very severe injury. I cannot wait there for their approval for like hours. What I'm expecting is that I'm expecting a response maybe within 5-10 minutes. So in that particular case, reasonable time may be 5-10 minutes, within which they should give me some sort of treatment, at least some first aid or something, because it's bleeding or something like that, right? I cannot wait for a longer period. But in another case, it may be a different thing, right? Take for example, this Ganpati just went, right? Ganesh Chaturthi went. So take for example, like you are organizers of, in a certain locality, you are organizing Ganpati. So what you are doing is that you have asked some kind of vendors what would be the charges for that Ganpati idol. So in that particular case, what happens is that it's understood, right, that for the coming Ganpati only you need that idol. So what happens is that they should respond to you within a certain time limit, maybe like at least 15 days, 13 days prior to the festival, right? They cannot respond to you now when the festival is over. So what is reasonable time? That would vary from, like situation to situation. We cannot say this is only what is reasonable time. If I'm going to a shop and asking them, do you have this particular, like particular thing or not, they should respond to me immediately, right? I cannot wait there for 2-3 days for their response. So in that particular case, it may be few minutes. If I'm going to a hospital, it may be certain few minutes. But if I'm asking someone if you can supply me these kind of eco-friendly Ganpati, this type of a Ganpati or not, maybe I am giving them few days time, few months time. So it should, when it is reasonable, at least few days before the festival, they should respond to me. But in another case, maybe I'm saying that, we have started, maybe I'm a builder, okay? I have sent some kind of, letters to some vendors. I'm saying that we are constructing these, flats in this particular locality, and we are looking for a person who can, fix doors. So in that particular case, maybe we have just started with the project, and it would take like 3 years or something like that. So in that case, reasonable time, maybe like within that 3 years, they should respond if they can do that particular task or not, right? So what is reasonable would vary from situation to situation. If time is mentioned, within that time we should give, otherwise a reasonable time depending on what kind of offer we are getting. Next is acceptance should be given before the offer lapses or is withdrawn. Anyone wants to explain this point?
Ma'am, it's like, the person who accepted the proposal, he have he need to, he need to make the proposal within, before time lapse, I think. Before the time lapse.
Before time lapses or before it is withdrawn. So if I'm saying that, right. So if I'm saying within 5 days, I'm looking for a person who can draft legal contracts. So in that case, when it will time will lapse after 5 days, right? So after 5 days I should not go. Or if I'm saying that like there are some portals where they would post some ads, okay, that I'm looking for a tutor, I'm looking for like a freelance content writer or something like that. In those cases, what they would mention is that consider this post to be closed after 24 hours, after 2 hours, or something like that. So what happens after 24 hours, they are withdrawing that particular offer. So after 24 hours, I cannot go and give my acceptance. Why? Because it was already withdrawn by that particular offerer. Or if they have mentioned a time frame, time lapses, after that I cannot give my acceptance to that. Why? Because this offer no longer exists, right, for me to give my acceptance. So is this part clear, the 6 different types of like rules? Any doubts on any point?
Ma'am, can E and F be clubbed together? Because those two derive the same meaning, no?
E and F, yeah, that is a little bit same only. Yeah, when it will lapse, obviously if time is prescribed, after that time is over, it will lapse. Or if it is withdrawn, it is a little same only
Okay.
with regard to time limit. Yeah. Okay, so these were like certain things that we need for valid acceptance. Now there are these like 2 cases that we will discuss. So first case is Feldhaus versus Bentley. Anyone wants to explain this case? This case is with regard to formation of a valid contract. So what basically was held that for formation of a valid contract, acceptance must be communicated, right? Offer is made, acceptance should be communicated to the person. Unless and until acceptance is communicated, there is no valid contract that we have. So that is what was basically held in this case. So what happened in this case is that there were 3 different parties, okay? One is the plaintiff, who is Paul Feldhaus. So what he was is that he was the uncle of this other person who was John Feldhaus. He was this nephew, okay? And there was another person who was an employee of that nephew, Bindley. So there were these 3 people, and there were, like some conversation between the uncle and nephew. So nephew was dealing with some, like horses, and uncle wanted to buy one horse. So what happened basically is that there were some conversation between the uncle and that nephew. They both were, like negotiating over price of a certain horse. Uncle was ready to pay a lesser price and nephew was expecting more price for that particular horse. So they did not come to any conclusion. They were just negotiating over it and the matter ended there. Later on, what happened? Uncle sent a letter to that nephew and he mentioned that if I do not hear anything from you, right, I would consider that this horse is mine for $30.15. So he just mentioned that if I do not hear anything from you as a response to this particular letter, I would consider that you have sold your horse to me and what I will pay you in return is that $30.15. So this is a letter that was sent by the uncle to his nephew. Now what happened is that nephew got that particular letter. He read that letter, but he was busy in some other auctions of the other horses. So in his mind, he thought that, okay, fine, I will give this horse to my uncle. And what he did is that he had this employee, right, other employee. He told his employee that this particular horse is being sold, so do not include it in that particular auction. But by some mistake, this employee, he sold that horse also. So by some mistake, he sold all the horses in that particular auction. Later on, uncle came to know that that particular horse was also been sold and also he did not receive any response from the nephew. So he filed a case in the court against this particular employee saying that this particular horse was actually sold to me, but now he sold it again to some other person in that particular auction. So I should be compensated for that. What court held is that there is no contract between you and your nephew. Why? Because you have just given one letter to your nephew. You have just mentioned, if I do not hear anything from you, I would consider you have sold your horse to me for $30.15. But the other person has not accepted, right? You have not given a chance to the other person to accept. Like what we discussed in last class, right? That in the offer, there cannot be a clause, non-acceptance of which would make it as if you have accepted it. So same happen in this case also, right? If you do not respond to this letter, I would consider you have sold your horse to me for $30.15. So in this case, what was held is that acceptance must be communicated to the other person, and we cannot have one clause in your, like offer that if you are not doing this particular thing, I would consider that you have given your acceptance, right? So that thing should not be done. So because there is no valid contract between you both, so the other, like employee is not liable to compensate you. Even though your nephew was in his mind agreeing to sell you that particular horse, he did not communicate about it, right? He accepted that he would sell that horse for $30.15, but he did not communicate about that acceptance. So until and unless he communicates about it, he is not bound under that particular acceptance. So you are not entitled to any sort of compensation from that particular employee. So is this case clear? Anyone wants it to be repeated? Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So at any point, if you feel any point should be repeated or something, like let me know. So, okay, fine. This case is with regard to acceptance, right? That acceptance must be communicated. Only then we can say that there is a valid contract that will be legally binding on the other person. Also, while making the offer, we cannot have one clause and say that if you are not following this clause, we would feel that you have accepted to it. I'm writing one letter and saying, if you are not responding to this letter, I would consider you have given acceptance. I'm writing an email and saying, if you do not respond to this email within 1 hour, I would consider you have accepted to it. We cannot do that. Acceptance should come from the other person freely, and it should be properly communicated to us as well. So there is one more case with regard to this only. So this case is relating to the third point, okay, that acceptance must be communicated. Unless and until it is communicated, the other person is not, like bound to perform his part of contract. Then there is one more case which is relating to only authorized person should communicate about acceptance. So it is relating to the fourth point, that only authorized person can communicate about the acceptance. So when I share this document with you, you can go through the case also, what basically happened in this case. Okay, this is another case. Anyone wants to explain the case, what it is? Regarding communication by authorized agent only. Now, what is authorized agent? It may be someone who is having authority, okay? Now, we will discuss that in the case only. Okay, so in this particular case, what happened is that, again, there were two different people, okay? So one person, he applied for a post as headmaster in a certain school. And after his application was received and everything, the managing committee of that particular school, they passed a resolution and they decided that we will appoint this particular person as headmaster for our school, right? But this particular resolution was passed like within that managing committee only, right? That particular resolution was not published or was not made public to the common people, right? It was only that the resolution was passed from, like within that particular managing committee only, and they decided that we will be appointing this particular person as our headmaster. But they were also having some other, like criteria, some other grounds. So as a result of which, what happened is that amongst those members of that managing committee, there were some, like confusion. Some were saying that this person should be appointed as headmaster. Some were saying this other person should be appointed as headmaster. So basically what they did is that they, like started taking votes. Whoever would get more votes, that person would be appointed. So finally, the other candidate got more votes. So they thought that we will now appoint this person only, okay? So what happened in this case? One person applied for the post of headmaster. After receiving the application, managing committee decided that we will appoint this person as headmaster of our school, right? And that resolution was not made public until then. But one of the members of that particular managing committee, he, like he had some relations with that particular candidate, okay? He knew that candidate. So what he did is that in his individual capacity, he told that person that you are being selected for the post of headmaster. And also a resolution is being passed by the managing committee with regard to the same, right? But while that member was letting the other person know, there was no official authority, right? Managing committee did not give him that power or authority that you go and inform it to the, like the candidate. It was done in his individual capacity, right? So even if that person was a member of that managing committee, he is not authorized to communicate about it. Why? Because managing committee has not given him the permission. Maybe you are otherwise an authorized person, but while communicating about it, you were not having the power. So it may be someone who is not authorized or someone who is not having the power at that particular moment. Maybe one peon was also there who heard about it and then he told about it to the candidate. So peon is someone who is not authorized, but a member is someone who is authorized, but at that moment he was not having the authority or power. So both the things would, like get cancelled out. Both the things would not be considered. So what happened in this case is that this particular person, he also, like communicated it to the candidate in his individual capacity that you are being selected for the post of headmaster. But later on, after all the confusion between the managing committee and everything, they decided that we will be appointing this other candidate as a headmaster for our school. So when he came to know about it, he filed a case against this Mr. Lee, who told him about that, right? That member of that particular managing committee who communicated about it without having any authority. He filed a case against them and said that I was being told that I'm being selected. Now, if you are not doing that, it would be a loss in terms of my salary and all of that. So I should be compensated for it. What was held is that there is no communication of that particular thing to you. So what happens is that it is not binding. So acceptance of an offer must be communicated to the offerer by the offeree himself or someone authorized person. If you have applied for a certain job, who can respond to you? Someone who is authorized or someone who is having the authority. Only that person can do. If some other employees of that particular entity in their individual position, they are letting you know about something, that is not considered as communication. Why? Because it is not official communication, right? Someone within his individual capacity might tell you anything that would not be considered as binding on the member. So is this case clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Others is still
Yes, ma'am.
other. Okay. Both the cases are clear, right, everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Neha and Mamta, cases are clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So now we know what is offered and what is acceptance and all of that, right? Now there are certain sections that we will study. Okay, fine. So this part we will study from the Bare Act. Okay, I'm sharing the Bare Act with you. Okay, so from Bare Act we will just go through certain sections that are important. So definition part we have already studied. Now the first chapter, right? First is the preliminary part, that is talking about application of the Indian Contract Act, that it would be applicable to entire India, and also definition of certain words, right? What offer means, what acceptance means, who is an offerer, offeree, and all of that. Now the first chapter of Indian Contract Act, it talks about communication, acceptance, and revocation of proposal. There are few sections here, like 6 sections, sections 3 to sections 9. So we will study these sections from the barracks so that it becomes very clear for you. What is section 3? It is talking about communication, acceptance, and revocation of proposals. So basically it is communication of offer, communication of acceptance, revocation of offer, or revocation of acceptance. So what the provision is, the communication of proposals that accept, the communication of proposals, the acceptance of proposals, and the revocation of proposals and acceptances respectively are deemed to be made by any act or omission of the party proposing, accepting, or revoking, by which he intends to communicate such proposal, acceptance, or revocation, or which has the effect of communicating it. Now, what does this mean? This means that to communicate about our offer, our acceptance, or revocation of offer or revocation of acceptance, what we need to do is that we need to do something, right? It may be by any act or by omission that we would let the other person know. So it basically is saying how we will communicate. Communicate about what? Communicate about acceptance or revocation of offer, except like offer, or like giving an offer and revocation of offer, giving acceptance or revocation of our acceptance, right? So both the two things, how will we communicate? We will communicate it by doing something or by not doing something. If I'm making you an offer and I'm saying like within 5 days you should respond to this email, after that this offer will be closed. In that case, you are not responding to me within that 5 days period. By not responding, you have communicated that you are not like accepting it. Or maybe you want to accept it, then what happens, you have responded to that particular email or something like that, right? So by doing something or by not doing something, we can communicate about offer or revocation of offer, acceptance or revocation of acceptance. So is this section clear? There are two different things, okay? One is offer and one is acceptance. For both the things, what we are doing, we are making the offer and we are revoking the offer. We are making the acceptance, giving the acceptance, and then we are revoking the acceptance, right? So for offer and acceptance, both giving offer, giving acceptance, and revoking offer, revoking acceptance, all the 4 things can be done by doing something or not doing something, right? By act or omission. Is this section clear or you want it to be repeated? Communication.
It's clear, ma'am.
So for section 3, it is talking about 2 things, offer and acceptance. Making an offer or revoking that offer. Giving acceptance or revoking acceptance. All these 4 things can be done how? By doing something or by not doing something. So that is about section 3. Now we will see what is section 4. Now section 4. Section 4 is about communication when complete. So we are talking about communication, that it should be communicated, otherwise it would not be binding on the parties. But when communication will become complete, right? So communication of proposal is complete when it comes to knowledge of the person to whom it is made. What is communication of proposal? Now, if I want to make an offer to you, I want to make an offer to you that I want to sell my 2-wheeler. It will be complete. This communication of proposal will be complete the moment you come to know about it, right? when it comes to knowledge of the person to whom it is made. If I want to sell my two-wheeler to you, I'm writing an email to you. But the moment you read that particular email and you come to know about the offer, that particular moment only communication is completed, right? So communication of proposal is completed when it comes to knowledge of the other person, right? What is communication? Letting the other person know. When will proposal be communicated? When this other person comes to know about it, right? As simple as that. When communication of proposal will be completed, I want to make an offer to another person. The moment this other person comes to know about it, it's communicated, right? It's complete. So it is very clear that when communication of proposal will be completed, the moment it comes to knowledge of the person to whom I want to make that particular offer. Now, next is with regard to communication of acceptance. Offer would be like I'm making this person to the other person comes to know it's complete. In case of acceptance, when it is complete, as against the proposer. Who is proposer? I'm the proposer who is making the proposal, who is making the offer, right? So as against the proposer, it is complete when it is put in the course of transmission to him so as to be out of power of the acceptor. Now take for example, I wrote a letter to you asking, would you be interested to buy my two-wheeler for 20,000 rupees? The moment you write a letter and put it in the post, like that post box, it goes out of your power, right? You cannot again take it out from there and you can change it or something like that. It goes out of your power or out of your reach. So at that moment, it is complete as against me. If I'm writing an email to you asking, would you be interested to buy my two-wheeler? Communication of offer is completed the moment you read that email. The moment you respond to that email saying, okay, fine, I am interested to buy it, communication of acceptance is completed as against me, right? Because it is put out of your reach. The moment you press that send button on your email section, the moment it goes out of your reach, you cannot again, undo that particular thing, right? If you have sent it, you cannot take it back. It would reach me anyways. So that moment it becomes completed or it becomes communicated as against me. As against the acceptor, when it comes, when I read that particular email or that particular letter, it becomes completed against this other person who gave his acceptance. So say it is very, easy to remember. What is communication? Communication is letting the other person know something, right? Expressing something. So when I'm making an offer, when it will be completed? Obviously, when the other person reads about it. For acceptance, when acceptance would be completed? The moment you post a letter, it goes out of your power, right? You cannot make changes to it. That means what? It is completed as against me. The moment I read that particular letter, it is completed as against you, right? Because I have already come to know about your acceptance. I have already read that particular email or that particular letter, so it is being completed. So is this part clear? Offer and acceptance, when it will be complete?
Yes, ma'am.
And also we are reading about revocation, right? So when communication of revocation is complete. So as against the person who makes it, when it is put into a course of transmission to the person to whom it is made, so as to be out of power of that person who makes it, as against the person to whom it is made, when it comes to his knowledge. So again, it is also similar to acceptance only. If I want to revoke an offer or if I want to revoke by acceptance, right? So as against the person who makes it, if I'm revoking it, when it is put in the course of transmission, right? I'm sending the letter, I'm sending an email or something like that. Once it goes out of my power, right? It becomes completed. Communication of revocation is completed. As against the person to whom it is made, when it comes to his knowledge, if it is sent to me with regard to revocation, the moment I read about it, it is completed. So for this communication part, you can just go through the sections only, what it basically is. So for communication, we would need to do an act or an omission so that this other person comes to know about it. And with regard to the time frame, it is section 4. So you can remember the sections what talks about the time frame, when communication is complete and all of that. Also, these illustrations are there of that same letter and post office. You can go through the direct also for this part. Now, section 5 is with regard to revocation of proposals and acceptance. What is revocation? Taking it back, right? If I'm making a proposal, revocation of proposal means I want to take back that particular proposal. I'm no more interested to enter into that particular contract. Revocation of acceptance is I have given my acceptance, now I want to revoke that acceptance. So when revocation of proposal and acceptances can be done? A proposal may be revoked at any time before the communication of its acceptance is complete as against the proposer, but not afterward. As against the proposer, as in if I am making an offer, as against me when it will be completed, the moment that letter is posted, the moment that email is being sent. I sent you a letter asking, would you be interested to buy my two-wheeler? The moment you write a letter and like post it, I cannot revoke it after that, but before that I may revoke my offer. All acceptances may be revoked at any time before communication of acceptance is complete as against the acceptor, but not otherwise. That means if you want to revoke your acceptance, you have already sent a letter to me, but take for example, you have sent a letter to me on 19th, but this letter is going to reach to my place on 24th. So from 19th to 24th, this time you have to revoke your acceptance. But after I read that particular acceptance, you cannot revoke it. So that is basically with regard to the time frame when it can be revoked, acceptance and proposal. Are these sections, any doubts on these sections? 3, 4, 5. 3, 4, 5, anyone wants to be repeated?
Ma'am, is there any rule that revocation should be done in a specified manner?
Revocation also again is same only. See, if it is, usually it is said that whatever mode you are giving your acceptance, that mode you may apply, or it may be any reasonable mode. Take for example, I'm writing a letter to you, and you have given your acceptance by writing like answering to that particular letter. Now you want to revoke that particular acceptance. Take for example, you have posted the letter today and you know it is going to reach me on 24th. So your revocation should be within that duration only, right? 19th to 24th. If you decide to write another letter, post it tomorrow, that letter is going to reach me on 25th. So maybe you can make a phone call and say that I'm revoking my acceptance or something like that. It may be a reasonable mode by which you are telling me and I come to know about it.
Okay, ma'am.
Next is revocation how made. So proposal, a proposal is revoked. How proposal is revoked? By the communication of notice of revocation by the proposer to the other party. If I'm making a proposal to a person, I'm making an offer to the person, how I will revoke my proposal? By communication of notice. I would let the other person know that I'm revoking my offer. I'm not looking forward to, like proceed with this particular offer. So to the other person, I'm letting know this other person about my revocation. By the lapse of time prescribed in such proposal for its acceptance, if I have already mentioned, you should give your acceptance within 5 days. After this 5 days time frame is over, then it becomes, like it is obviously revoked, right? After 5 days time, you cannot come back to me saying that I'm accepting your offer. Why? Because this time limit that I had set already has expired. So that would automatically get revoked, right? or if no time limit is prescribed by the lapse of reasonable time without communication of acceptance. It may be a reasonable time frame if I have not mentioned anything. Take for example, I was looking for a Ganpati idol. It was supposed to be before the festival. If now you are giving your acceptance, then it obviously means that this particular offer is being revoked, right? That may apply in many other cases also, where after this reasonable time limit has expired, without communication of acceptance, you have not communicated your acceptance within that reasonable time frame. Now reasonable time has gone, so now it is being revoked. So that is like implied only. I'm not writing an email to you or telling you directly, but it is implied. The time limit has already expired, so it is being revoked. This offer no longer exists. Next is by the failure of the acceptor to fulfill a condition precedent to acceptance. Now there may be another condition which I had put, okay? It can be, take for example, I told you that, okay, so I told you that I am in like a urgent need of money. So what I want to do is that I want to sell my two-wheeler, and what I'm expecting is that at least 10,000 rupees you should give me within 2 days. What you said is that, okay, fine. Immediately you said that, okay, fine, I'm buying your two-wheeler and I would pay you the amount also. But within 2 days, I asked you to pay 10,000 rupees. You did not pay that amount. That means what? You have failed to perform or fulfill this particular condition that I had mentioned, right? Along with acceptance that should be done. So if you fail to perform that particular part, then also you can say that offer is being revoked, because I clearly told you within 2 days only, you should pay me this 10,000 rupees advance. If you fail to do that, that also means this is also being revoked, right? Because you failed to perform your part. Next is by the death or insanity of the proposer, if the fact of his death or insanity comes to knowledge of the acceptor before his acceptance. So if the person making the offer dies or he becomes insane, that means he becomes incapable of entering into a contract. So that again implies, right, that if I'm no more able to make a contract, how can you, that particular offer is being revoked, right? I'm no longer there to perform my part of contract or things like that. So that also implies that it is being revoked. So is this section clear how it may be revoked? Proposal.
Ma'am, in case of death or insanity of, can the legal representative take his behalf on that place?
See again,
Can he
for
replace him?
yeah, so say again, for legal representatives also it would depend. Now take for example one father is there, okay? Father wanted to make a proposal that take for example, there was a shop. Father wanted to start selling like this Ramdev, right, Patanjali goods in that particular shop. So what he did is that he made an offer to that to whomever it should be made for Patanjali goods. So he made an offer to them saying that we want to sell Patanjali goods in our shop. Now, after father's death, maybe his son would take over that particular shop. But now son is not at all interested in all those goods. What he want to do is that maybe he want to start some electronic items or something like that in it. Or maybe he is not in favor of the Patanjali whole concept. Maybe he want to buy some other normal, commercialized products. So now in that case also we cannot make the legal representatives bound, because they might have their own philosophy, own thinking and own ideologies, right? So if it is not even being completed, we cannot just make the person liable. If it was something that was continuing, maybe we can ask that person to close all the other formalities or something like that. But this is at this stage of offer only, the person died, so we cannot just impose it on the legal representative. Maybe they would have certain other things. Also after death of the person, there would be like 100 other formalities that the legal representatives will have to perform to get ownership of that particular shop or something like that, right? To get their rights actually. So that thing we would not consider here, because they would not be bound by someone else's offer.
Okay, ma'am.
So next is acceptance must be absolute. So this point we have already discussed, right? Whenever I'm giving my acceptance, it should be what? It should be absolute and unqualified. Whatever is being said to that, all those points I'm accepting, and I'm not putting any other conditions or anything to that. It must be expressed in some usual or reasonable manner unless proposal prescribes the manner. If proposal prescribes in that manner, unless other than that, it should be within a reasonable manner. It should be within a reasonable time. So this part we have already discussed. Acceptance by performing conditions or receiving consideration. Performance of the conditions of a proposal or the acceptance of any condition for a reciprocal promise which may be offered with a proposal is an acceptance of that particular proposal. So performance of conditions of a proposal, right? In the proposal itself, if I had mentioned certain conditions, if you are fulfilling those conditions, that may also mean you are accepting to it. Or acceptance of any consideration for a reciprocal promise which may be offered with a proposal. Now take for example, along with the proposal, I have mentioned certain other conditions or something, you are fulfilling those conditions. Take for example, I have mentioned you that I want 5 kgs of rice every single month. Okay, every single month I want to buy 5 kgs of this particular rice. Now what you are doing is that you have immediately sent me 5 kgs of rice for that particular month. That means by doing that you have given your acceptance. Also it may be you are doing some other things, some reciprocal promise that were there, right? Maybe I told you that what example I can give? Maybe I told you that like you are dealing with like a lot of different varieties of rice. I told you that every single month you need to send me sample of your rice. I would see its quality, then I would decide if we want to proceed with that or not. I would need that rice in a bigger quantity, but every single month you need to send your samples. So what you are doing is that you have already sent samples for that particular month. So in that case, what you are doing, some other promises that were there, you have already performed that, right? So in that case also I can say that, like you have given your consideration, you have given your acceptance. So acceptance of any consideration for reciprocal promise. I have also accepted that sample, and then like if I have accepted it, that means what? We are agreeing to perform that particular part of contract, right? So it may be by performing something also that we are giving our acceptance. Is this section clear what it is? Performing conditions or receiving consideration? So performing condition as in with regard to that particular offer, I'm performing something, right? Receiving consideration is in I'm receiving something in exchange of that. Maybe I'm saying that I need 5 kgs of rice every single month, and I would also, give you like 1 kg of 1 kg of rice flour. So I have given you that and you have accepted. That means what? You have taken some consideration that is attached along with that particular contract. So by accepting that consideration, it is implied that you have given your acceptance to my proposal or to my offer. Is this part clear, all the sections? If you want any sections to be repeated, let me know.
It's clear, ma'am.
Next is promise, express or implied. So insofar as proposal or acceptance of a promise is made in words, they promise. So this also same only like what we studied for offer, right? It should be, if it is in terms of clear words, it is expressed. If it is implied from actions, behavior or something, that it is implied. So with regard to offer and acceptance. So you can just go through these sections from the bare act, okay? And also for all of you who do not have contract act as your like main subject, what you guys can do is that see, there are many like questions, right, that come from the sections part. So if it is not there in your mains, what you can go do is that you can basically go through this uh, content part, right? From here you can just read the sections, which section is talking about what. So in case a question comes regarding like revocation of proposal and acceptances, which section talks about it, options are given. Take for example 5, 8, 9, 10, like that, options are given. So you will know that, okay, fine, it is section 5 that is talking about this provision. So you can just go through this part so that you know the sections for the like different important parts of the Indian Contract Act. Okay, so acceptance part we have discussed, right? That these are the rules that we need, and these are the two important cases that we can you can go through with regard to acceptance. Now, what we need is that second essential, right? What is the second essential? It is intention to create legal relationship. Now, what is intention to create legal relationship? If you are making a promise to your friend that maybe I like this particular actor or actress, I want to watch his movie on like first day first show only, and you made an offer to your friend also accepted. Later on, you do not go out with that particular friend. Your friend cannot go to the court and file a case against you. Why? Because there was no intention to create legal relationship. It was just a promise that you made to your friend. It may be a promise that you make to your any other family members, right? Maybe you make a promise with your siblings, right? That from from 9 to 12 o'clock I will watch TV. After that you can watch, or like morning times you can watch. Now if you do not allow your like brother or sister to watch TV during that particular duration, they cannot go to the court and file a case against you, right? Why? Because those were certain types of promises that are called as the promises of a social nature. We do end up making a lot of that kind of promises, but there we do not have the intention of entering into a legal relationship, right? We do not have that intention, so those would not be considered as a contract. So for a valid contract, what we need intention to create legal relationship. Yesterday we discussed this case also, right? Belfer versus Belfer. That case is also related to this thing only, right? Intention to create legal relationship. Anyone remembers this case? What was held in that particular case? Belfer versus Belfer. Mamta, do you remember the case Belfer versus Belfer?
No, ma'am. I've
Okay.
forgotten.
Okay. Vijay, do you remember?
No, forgot.
Forgot. Okay. Aishwarya?
Ma'am, I remember roughly that that is between a husband and wife, ma'am.
Yeah, husband and wife.
Yeah, husband will be transferred to some other place on work, and he will promise his wife that he will send so much amount of money every month.
Yeah.
And once he fails to send, ma'am, so she goes to the court regarding that he has failed his duty, that he is not paid every month. And the court says that there does not exist any legal relationship between you and your husband.
Yeah, right. So there was no intention to create legal relationship when this promise was made. What happened in this case? Belfer versus Belfer. So Mr. and Mrs. Belfer, they were basically from Sri Lanka. They went to England for like a holiday, and while going there, Mrs. Belfer, she felt sick. While visiting doctors said that the climatic conditions of Sri Lanka is not good for this health issue. So maybe it would be better if you stay here for few more days. like recover from your illness, and then you can go back to your native. But husband had to go back for his work. So he returned to Sri Lanka, and while going, he made a promise to his wife that you stay here, you get your treatments done. I will be sending you an amount of 30 pounds every single month so that you can, like take care of your expenses. So he was sending that after returning to Sri Lanka, but later on there were some differences between them. They got divorced. So after that, what wife was demanding is that because my husband already promised me to pay, like 30 pounds every single month, he should be, like doing that even now. What court held that is that there may be many different promises made between husband and wife, or any other family members for that matter, but it does not necessarily mean that there was an intention to create legal relationship. While this promise was made, Mr. Bedford was not having this intention of entering into any kind of legal relationship with you. So he is not liable to pay you this amount of maintenance after you both are separated or things like that. So basically what we need is that we need intention to create legal relationship, right? Between husband and wife, there may be multiple types of promises, multiple types of understandings. It does not mean that they want to enter into any kind of legal relationship, or after their separation or after their divorce also they need to fulfill all those things promised, right? So things are different between like within a family, amongst family members. But that does not mean that we are willing to enter into a legal relationship with our other family members, right? So this is what was basically held. So for a valid contract, what we need intention to enter into legal relationship. Now, when it becomes an obligation on us, when there is consideration, right? Consideration is very important, right? It is consideration only that separates an agreement from a contract. When there is consideration, court would take notice of that, right? If it is something that court values, right? Consideration cannot be like you making a promise to your friend to go out for a movie because it's your friend's birthday. Maybe it's a consideration for your friend that she would get a company to go with you for a movie. But it is not a consideration in terms of court's views, right? Court would not take notice of those simple things. So what is consideration? It should be something that court would recognize and then court would take action accordingly. So we need consideration also for formation of a valid contract. Which section defines consideration? It is section 2D. Anyone wants to explain what is consideration? The section is also given. You can just try to read from there and explain what is consideration. Mamta, you want to explain what is consideration?
No, ma'am. I think this definition you should come, ma'am. Like.
Okay. Okay, so this is like one big definition under Indian contract. Others are to very small definition. So what is consideration? It says when at the desire of the promisor. Who is promisor? The person who is making the proposal, right? If I'm making an offer to you, I'm making a proposal to you, I'm the promisor. So at my desire, right? When at the desire of the promisor, I'm making an offer to you. So at my desire, what is happening at my desire? The promisee or any other person. That means if I'm making a proposal to you, at my desire, you or someone else on your behalf has done or abstained from doing, or does or abstains from doing, or promises to do or abstain from doing something, right? That particular thing, right? That particular act or abstinence would be called as consideration. Take for example, I am making a proposal to you. I want to sell my two-wheeler for 20,000 rupees. Now, 20,000 rupees is consideration for me, right? So at my desire that I want 20,000 rupees, at my desire, what you are doing is that you are paying that 20,000 rupees to me. Or maybe your parents are paying that 20,000 rupees to me. So what is consideration? For me, that 20,000 rupees is consideration that I am getting from you. right? And for you, what would be consideration? That two-wheeler vehicle would be consideration. So what is consideration? Consideration is something that we are getting out of that particular contract because of which we are performing our part, right? If I am selling you my two-wheeler, why am I selling you? Because I want that 20,000 rupees. Why are you paying 20,000 rupees to me? Because you want to use a two-wheeler for your travel and everything, right? So what is consideration? For me, that 20,000 rupees, and for you, that two-wheeler is consideration. So in any other case, it may be, take for example, I am, I am providing some kind of contract drafting service to a company, right? I'm drafting legal contracts for them. Now, those legal contracts would be consideration for that company, because with the help of those contracts, they can enter into contract with different vendors. For me, what would be consideration? Consideration would be the amount that I'm charging for drafting each single contract, right? So that is what is consideration. So at the desire of the company, I'm writing those contracts for them. So that those contracts would be consideration for that company. What will be consideration for me? The money that I'm getting would be consideration for me. So it is defined under section 2D that whatever we are getting basically, right? It is as simple as that. What is consideration? What you are getting out of that contract, because of which you are performing your part. You won't just simply perform any part, like you won't simply go on helping people, like without a reason, right? You would expect something in return. So whatever you are getting in return of that, that is consideration for you. So consideration would be different for both the parties. One person is getting those already, like prepared proper legal contracts, and for the other person, that person is getting payment for the service that is being provided. So that is consideration. So it would differ for both the two parties. Whatever I am getting because of performing my part is consideration. If I am getting money because I am writing those contracts, money is consideration for me. If company is getting some ready-made, well-written contracts because of paying some amount to me, those contracts would be consideration for the company. Is this part clear, the definition? What is consideration?
Yes, ma'am.
So why is it said at the desire of the promisor? It is said, right, at the desire of the promisor. But both of us are getting something as consideration. So why it is said at the desire of promisor? Because if I am making a proposal, right, I would tell you at front, like in that offer itself, I would say what I want in exchange of that, right? If I am a person who provide, like who draft contracts, like legal contracts, maybe I'm writing an email to a company. I would say that I can write legal contracts for you, and I would be charging 1,000 rupees per contract that I will draft for you. Now, in that particular case, I have already mentioned what I'm expecting as a consideration, right? So it is said at the desire of promisor, because I'm the first person who is making the offer and who is also mentioning the amount that I would be charging for every single contract, right? So this is why it is mentioned as at the desire of promisor, because usually if I am making an offer, I'm the person who will also mention what consideration I'm expecting in return of that particular like promise, right? My part of contract. So this is about the definition. Now we will see what is nature of consideration. Nature of consideration. So there are like 4 things that should be there for a valid consideration. First is it must not be in the past. It must not be in the past. In the past, as in it should not be something that happened in, like in the past. Why it should not be something like that? Because in that case, it won't be at my desire, right? It should be at my desire or desire of the promisor. So it should not be done in the past. Take for example, one day, okay, while I was maybe, like returning to my home, I saw one person, he was severely injured because of some accident. There is no one around. What I did is that because of, like as a moral responsibility, I took that person to the nearby hospital and got his, like treatment done. that person did not request me that, like, please take me to the hospital or something like that. I did it myself without any kind of, like, request or anything from that other person. Later on, the person recovered and everything. Now I cannot go to the person and say that day I took you to the hospital and I saved your life. So now what you do is that you give your, like, give your vehicle to me for free as a gift, or, like, as a token of appreciation. I cannot do that. Why? Because consideration must not be in the past. Whatever help I did to that particular person, it was something that I did out of my own will, right? The person did not request me. The person did not promise me anything as a gift because I took him to the hospital. So later on, I cannot use that particular thing and say that you performed this thing to me for now. I cannot say that, okay, fine, that day I saved your life, so maybe today you, like, anything, right? You provide me this particular service for free. You provide me this particular thing for free. I cannot do that. Why? Because consideration cannot be in past, and both the promiser and promisee will have consideration, right? Both the parties should be getting consideration. So it should be always at the desire of promiser. Now I'm making a promise. I'm also telling you what consideration I'm expecting, and based on that it should happen. So it should not be in the past. Something done in the past without your request, without your anything, that I cannot use as a consideration to make you, like, do something today. So is it clear what is must not be in past? First condition.
Yes, ma'am.
Second is, it must have value in the eyes of law.
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me.
Yeah.
That meaning of consideration, we can easily put it in our words like, consideration is getting some benefits out of the, some proposal or offer, right, ma'am?
Yeah, you can say like that. So if you are writing in your own words, maybe you can say consideration is something that the other person is doing, right? Maybe it is an act or something that is provided by the other person, because of which the promisee will perform his part, right? If you want, I will just write it in my own words while sharing this document with you. Okay, write it in simple words, like not the definition one. I will give you a meaning of consideration if you want. From there also you would be able to read. So it is basically just to remember. You can remember it is something that you are getting out of the contract. But when you are writing an answer, maybe it won't be appropriate to just write, like something that we are getting. What something? It would be some kind of act, some kind of service, or something that you are getting out of it. So I will just write it in one line. What is consideration?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So next is, it must have value in the eyes of law. Now, what is having value in the eyes of law? Take, for example, there is a contract between you and me with regard to selling of a vehicle for 20,000 rupees. Now that thing would have, like, value in the eyes of law, right? Court to take notice of that, because it's a vehicle on one side and on another side it's 20,000 rupees, for which we have, like, dealt with each other, right? So that thing will have value in the eyes of law. But now take, for example, you made a promise to your friend that I will go out with you to watch this particular movie first day, first show. Later on, you refuse to go. Your friend is like, for this particular actor, I would watch all his movies first day, first show only. Just because of her, I could not watch this movie. So will court recognize that particular thing? That particular thing will not have any value in the eyes of law, right? That someone is going and watching first show of a first day, first show of an actor. That is not having value in the eyes of law, right? So that is not something that court would recognize. So consideration should always be something that court would take notice of, right? Maybe you are making an, maybe like you are staying in Bangalore for like many years. You have a lot of friends here. One of your friends from your native, she, like, moves to Bangalore, and she's not having any friends or anyone. She don't know anyone here. And what you told is that, okay, fine, I will just come over to your place to give you company, and like we can watch movies or things like that. Later on, if you do not go to her place, she cannot go to the court saying that, like getting company of someone was consideration for me. Why? Because that is something that court would not take notice of, right? Otherwise there would be like thousands of cases that will be filed every single day. So it should be something which court would take notice of, which is having some value in the eyes of law. Then only it would be like a proper matter for which we are going to court, and court would take notice of it. Otherwise the court would just dismiss the case, right? Saying it's not like enough, cause of action is not there. So it should have something which is having value in the eyes of law. Third is, it must be sufficient and not adequate. Anyone wants to explain what this point is? It must be sufficient. It must be sufficient but may not be adequate.
Ma'am, the consideration should be appropriate, ma'am. It should not be too less or it should not be too low. It should be to the value of the object or the property, ma'am.
Okay. So it must be sufficient. What is sufficient? Sufficient for both the parties to the contract to agree to it. Okay. And it may not be adequate. Adequate as in what is the value of it, right? Take for example, what to say? Take for example, I bought this toy for how much rupees? I bought this toy for, take for example, 500 rupees. Okay. Now what is adequate? For this toy of 500 rupees, I should be getting like at least 400, 450 rupees because it's a new toy. That is what is adequate. But now take for example, I need money very urgently, and how much amount I need? I just need 50 rupees. What I have is that I don't have any other option to get money, but only option that I have is to sell this particular toy. What I'm doing is that I'm asking you, will you be interested to pay 50 rupees for this toy and take it? And you also felt that, okay, fine, it's just 50 rupees, I can take this toy, and you took it. Now that is what is called sufficient. It is 50 rupees is sufficient for me to sell this toy to you, and for you it is sufficient that you pay 50 rupees for this toy. So in that particular case, right, court would not come into picture and say that how can you pay 50 rupees for a 500 rupees toy? Why? Because court won't take notice of all those simple things. If parties to the contract are satisfied, are happy, are okay with it, court has no problem with it. So we won't see what is actual price of this particular thing, what should be getting, and all of that. It should not be adequate, but it should be sufficient for both the parties to the contract. You will even see in many cases what happens is that maybe someone in someone's family is having like health issues. They need money very urgently. They don't have any other option but to sell a certain property of theirs. Maybe that property was of a very high value, but because they need it on such an urgent basis, whomever they can, they would sell it, maybe for a very less price. Maybe they were having a property which was like worth 30 lakhs, but they would sell it for only 5 lakhs rupees. Why? Because they needed 5 lakhs rupees very urgently. So in that case, court won't come into picture and say, how can you sell this 30 lakhs rupees property for 5 lakhs rupees only? Court won't do that. Why? Because it is sufficient for both the two parties that they are happy and okay to go forward with this contract. So court won't come in every single thing and then interfere in it. So that is what it is, that it should be sufficient for both the parties to proceed with it, but it may not be adequate. It may not be adequate based on the market price or price of the product or price of the service or anything like that. Next is must move from the promisee to the promiser. So consideration will move from the promisee to the promiser. If I am saying I want to sell my two-wheeler for 20,000 rupees, you are the one who would be giving me 20,000 rupees. So it may be you or your parents or your friends or someone like that, right? So it may come from you or anyone on your behalf. It would come to me and accordingly consideration would take place. So is this part clear, nature of consideration? Nature
Yes,
of
ma'am.
Am I going like too fast or something?
No, ma'am.
Okay, next thing that we have, so now we know what is consideration, right? It is something that we are getting out of performing our part of contract. What is nature of contract? It should not be something done in the past, because that would be something that is done without my desire, without my request or things like that. It should have value in the eyes of law. It must be sufficient, but it may not be adequate. It must move to the promisee, from the promisee to the promiser, or someone on behalf of the promisee also. Now we know what is consideration, but what is not consideration? So what is not consideration? There are two things that are mentioned. One is existing contractual duty, another one is an existing public duty. What is an existing contractual duty? Take for example, there is already a contract between you and me, and under that contract I am anyways bound to perform that particular part. So under that I cannot say that this is consideration and I cannot expect something else from you. Take for example, I will give you an example. Okay, take for example, I'm an employee of a certain company. Okay, I'm an employee. I'm a legal associate of ABC company, right? In my job description, it is written that whatever legal work company wants, they can assign that legal work to me. Okay, so my job role is that any legal work company may provide me. In that particular case, I am already having this contract with the company that I would be performing their legal task and I would be getting my salary. So in this particular case, take for example, otherwise what company makes me to do is that draft contracts. Okay, what I need to do basically is that I need to draft certain contracts. That is what I have been doing for 3-4 years. So that is what something that is already existing under a contract. Now at any moment, take for example, company decides to start a new business or a new project. They want someone to do some kind of legal research work. They want to do some kind of legal research work for a certain duration. So what they can do is that they can ask me to do that thing for them. In that case, I cannot go and say that you should pay me extra for this. Why? Because my job role already was to do any kind of legal work that company is providing, right? So that is what, that is something that is existing contractual duty. Under some existing contract, I'm already bound to perform that thing. So even if it's a different work, different thing that they are asking or expecting from me, I cannot ask them extra thing for that. Or any example you can take for example, A is a person. Okay, A is a person, he is having B a house help, he is having, and also he is having a C who is a cook. Okay, now what is B? B is a house help. What is B's job role? That B need to do anything for, you know, like the family, anything that is needed to be done for the family. But because A is also having a cook, B do not cook food for the family. On a certain day, if C is absent from his work, family members can ask B to cook food for them. Why? Because he is already a house help whose job role is to, you know, like do anything that is needed for that family. So in that case, B cannot say that you pay me extra that I am cooking food for you. Why? Because it is something that is already existing under a contract, right? Existing contractual duty. But in another case, take for example, they are also having like a D driver. Now, if A asks the driver that you cook food for us, in that case, driver can demand extra money. Why? Because driver is not supposed to cook food for the family, right? So if driver is asked to cook food for the family, that is something which is not coming under existing contractual duty. But if a house help is asked to cook food for the family, that is something which is already coming under an existing contractual duty. So house help cannot say that it is consideration for you that I'm cooking food for you, you pay me extra. House help cannot say that. Why? Because it is something which is an existing contractual duty. Similarly, what I cannot do, I cannot say that I'm already drafting contracts for your company. If you want some legal research work to be done, you need to pay me extra. Why? Because it is also something which is already there, right? Already an existing contractual duty. Is this part clear? What is existing contractual duty that won't become a consideration? Is it clear? Anyone wants to be repeated?
It's clear, ma'am.
Next is an existing public duty. Now, what is public duty? Maybe I'm a government employee. I'm already having a public duty, right? So take for example, I am working at the RTO office, okay? Take for example, I am an employee at the regional transport office, okay? RTO office of maybe Indiranagar. Now what happens is that being an employee of the RTO office, I'm having certain duties towards the public. Whoever is coming to my office for issuance of driving license, RC, then permit or any other things, right? I'm supposed to issue those things to them. In that case, what I cannot do, I cannot tell the person that, okay, fine, you have come to me for issuance of driving license, I will issue your driving license. But what business are you doing? You are dealing with oils, right? So what you need to do is that you need to supply me 10 liters of this particular oil for free because I'm supplying you driving license. I cannot do that. Why? Because issuing that driving license is already a public duty that I am having under my job role, right? I cannot ask for something else. I cannot ask that person that you pay me 10,000 rupees, then I will, like issue that driving license. That would be bribery, right? I'm asking for a bribe for doing something which is already a duty that I am having and I'm taking salary for that. Maybe I'm a person working at the passport office, okay? Passport office, and you have come to me, you have like submitted your form, all the other documents, everything is proper, you want your passport to be issued. I cannot say that you pay me 5,000 rupees, then I will issue your passport. Why? Because it is already a public duty that I am having. I cannot even say that like you supply me this thing for free or something like that, right? Why? Because that is not consideration that I am supplying your passport to you. It is a public duty that I'm already having. Similarly, for passport, you would go to police station for like police station verification, right? So the police officers would often ask you for bribe, right? That pay me 5,000 rupees, pay me 1,000 rupees. You are not supposed to pay that price. Why? Because that police officer is already getting money from government. He is already getting his salary because he is doing that particular part of police verification. If he is asking for additional money, that means he is taking bribe. So whatever is an existing public duty, that cannot be a consideration. Based on that, we cannot ask the other person to do something or pay us some extra money. So this is not consideration, right? An existing contractual duty. We are already having a contract. Under that, I'm already bound to do something. Or I'm already having a public duty, being an employee of a certain office, certain department or something like that, and I'm doing my just job role. For that, I cannot make the other person perform something for me. So those two things are not consideration. So is this part clear until this part, whatever we discussed today?
Yes, ma'am.
It's clear, ma'am.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
okay. So next class we will discuss with the other parts, okay, privity and all of that. And like tomorrow or day after tomorrow, I will share this document. You can go through this part. If anything is not clear or something like that, you can tell in next class also. Okay. So, okay. So speed and all, is it fine? You want any changes to be made or something? You can let me know.
It's fine, ma'am.
Okay. So sure, then I will share this document. You can go through this also, the cases and all, and then we will continue with the other parts, that is privity of consideration and privity of contract. What is privity? What is, like what all things a third party can do, what all things a third party cannot do. From that part, we will continue with it. So until then, you can also go through the BEREC, the different sections and all of that also you can read, so that you have an idea with regard to the sections as well. Fine then, so I'm ending this class here, okay?
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank
Good
you, ma'am.
night. Yeah.